Hi, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. I want to tell you a story from my childhood. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, Ida Cohen, used to live off of Myra Street, Myra and Post Street in Riverside, and we would go over to her house for Shabbat every week. Sometimes we'd go early in the day and I'd spend time with her and help her make challah. Well, one Friday was the strangest Friday I ever spent with my grandmother. She was busy in the kitchen mixing up her dough for challah, and I don't know what I was doing, probably running around outside somewhere. And she called me in and she said, Karen, I don't have any more honey for my challah. What am I going to do? Here, be a good little girl. Go to the store for me. And she gave me some money to go up to the grocery store, which was on the corner of Post Street and Myra. Well, I loved her street. It was made out of bricks, and there were still the rails in the middle of the street from the streetcars that used to go down the street before everyone had cars. And so I walked along the rails and I tripped a little bit on the bricks that were on her street, but that was always the most fun part. And as I was walking, I come across on the corner, there was the grocery store, but I always walked just a little bit further. There was an antique store, and I used to love to look in the window of the antique store. And next door to that was a drugstore with the best vanilla ice cream in the world. So needless to say, I took my time. Well, I got into the grocery store and I looked for the honey, but I was just a little girl and, I didn't really know where to look. So I asked the store manager, Mr. Goldman, can you help me find the honey? And he did, and I paid for it and I left and I walked home and I probably skipped a little bit and ran a little bit. When I got back to my grandmother's house, there on the front porch was a bear. And he looked at me and he said, give me all your honey. Rawr. Well, I dropped the honey and I ran in the house going, Granny, 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 there's a bear on your front steps and he took the honey. She looked at me and she said, look, if you lost the money, all you had to do was tell me. I said, Granny, I'm telling you the truth. There's a bear and he took the honey. Well, she called my sister, and my sister was a little bit older than me, and she said, Peggy, I am out of honey, and I need it to finish making my challah for Shabbat. Peggy, be a dear. Run to the grocery store for me and get me some honey. So, of course, my sister, being the responsible one of the two of us, went to the grocery store. Now, I don't know how many places she stopped along the way, but she took her time as well. And when she got back from the grocery store with that precious jar of honey in her hands, and she came up to the front porch of my grandmother's house, there was the bear. And he looked at her and he says, give me all your honey. Rawr. And of course she dropped the honey right there in front of him and ran in yelling, Granny, 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 there's a bear. So my grandmother looked at my sister so unhappy with her and said, I thought you would have a little more sense than your sister. I'm going to call your brother. Maybe he can do this. He's in college. Maybe he can get to the store and get me what I need. So she called my brother and she says, Jerry, your sisters are just a little bit silly today. Could you please go to the store for me and get me some honey? I need it to make my challah. So my brother, who didn't really like getting up from reading his books, got up from his books and he meandered to the store. And while he was there, he talked to Mr. Goldman and wished him a Shabbat Shalom. And finally, he left to come home. And he took his time walking home, walked along those same little rails that I did. And when he got home, there was that same bear who looked at him and said, give me all your honey. And my brother dropped it and he ran in the house and he says, Granny, you're not going to believe it. They were right. There's a bear on your front porch and he took the honey. Well, my grandmother just looks at him and goes, oy vey, You know, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. And so she put on her little scarf because she never went out without having her shoulders covered and her hair covered. And she walked to the grocery. And she said, "Hi, Mr. Goldman, how you doing? Those rotten kids of mine, I don't know what's going on with my grandchildren. They each came to buy honey and no one came home with it." And he says, "Well, this time you'll have your honey." So she walked home, and there on her front porch step was a bear. And the bear looked at my grandmother, and he reared up on his hind legs, and he put his paws up in the air, and he went, "Ah!" And she says, "No, sir, you are not going to take my honey. You are not going to scare me. What are you doing in Riverside? Bears don't come to Riverside." And he said, "I know, I'm lost. I don't know how to get home. I got lost. I was in a storybook, and the next thing I knew, here I was on your front porch." Well, my grandmother looked at him, and she says, "We have to do something for you. Come on in. We're going to celebrate Shabbat together, and after that, we're going to try and find your way home." Well, I don't know about you, but I have not had a Shabbat quite like that since I was a child. I hope you have some good Shabbat stories to share. Shabbat Shalom, friends.